So a couple of months ago, I went down to the Victory Artist showroom just to check out a few more amps. They also had a couple of limited edition amps released with limited edition Celestion speakers. And they were glorious, glorious amplifiers. They were combos. One was the Sheriff 25 and one was the Deputy. Now, I'd never played a Deputy before and honestly didn't know too much about it either, other than it was a collaboration with Pete Honore, Danish Pete. But when I was playing it, I had a little bit of a moment. You know, I don't often get to play amps really loud, and I was really feeling this amp. It sounded absolutely spectacular. It had that classic chime and attitude of a British amp like the Sheriff or even the Copper, but had a feature set and a versatility that was more akin to the Victory Duchess, which I am very, very used to. So when I came home, I continued to annoy the guys at Victory for weeks, basically saying, can I get one of these Deputies and have a mess around with it on a long-term basis? And well, the guys at Victory are always awesome. And here it is. Not the limited edition combo, but the head and matching cabinet, 1x12 cab with a creamback speaker in. And this amp setup has been amazing for me. So my initial understanding of this amp was that it was a collaboration with Danish Pete, as I said, but it was sort of the vintage channel from the Sheriff 25, an amp that I know really well, and also a channel I know really well. I really like that channel from the Sheriff 35. It's more vintage inspired, obviously, than the Hot Rod channel, and has a little more usable amount of gain for my personal use. And yes, that may be the foundation of the Deputy, but getting to know this thing, it is something completely different to that, and it's its own amp with its own identity, and I think Victory and Danish Pete really knocked it out of the park with this one. Much more of a clean amp that takes pedals excellently. You can push it if you want it to, but really it's a great clean pedal platform with a bit more character. It's 25 watt heads, single channel, which I personally dig, 3-band EQ, a bright switch and a voicing switch, which are key to expanding this amp's sound. An effects loop, which is cool, not my thing, but it's good to have. And probably, I don't know if it's any different to the other amps, but I would say this is Victory's best digital reverb. Somewhere between a plate and a hall. It's quite modern sounding, but I don't know, in this amp, it just sounds better than the reverbs in Victory's other amps, in my opinion. And that's it, really. It's a really simple amp, and I love it because of that. That single channel spans a load of classic British sounds from the 60s and 70s, but to my ears, it also can do American sounds really well as well. Weirdly enough, this is a British style amp that nails John Mayer tones. I know that doesn't make sense, but you just gotta hear it. In fact, let's scoop some mids, push up the bass a little bit more reverb. And you know what I think it is that pushes it in that direction is this, the snappiness and immediacy. You know, I find that British amplifiers, your Marshalls and your Voxers somewhat are a little spongy under the fingers, and that's part of where the character comes from. Whereas this kind of has that tonality, but is much snappier and immediate. And I think that lends itself more to those American Mary, Stevie Ray Vaughan type of tones. But it can do more than that as well. Let's switch guitars and we'll explore the voicing switch and also a few more tones. So most of the clean sounds can be found on voice position 1, which is where we are now. You can already hear it's gaining up a little more than with the Silver Sky. course, if we do push the gain on voice 1, then we are going to get a bit of gain out of it. At this volume, with the master, what is it, halfway? If you turn up to a gig and play that loud, you'll be asked to turn down. We are loud at the moment, which is deceiving because, you know, you'd still count this as a relatively low wattage amp at 25 watts, but it punches. It really punches. For me, that is a bright enough tone, but we can introduce a bit of more brightness with the bright switch. I don't need all that brightness. Let's put the gain there and we'll cycle through the different voices. So voice 1. Voice 2 introduces a little more gain. That's a really lovely, warm amp overdrive tone. Voice position 3 is the same amount of gain as that, but it adds a boost to the mid and treble frequencies. Almost like you're putting a treble booster into the front of your amp, or more like a top boost sound from an AC style amp. Voice 3. Okie dokie. That's something, isn't it? Okay, let's just take a minute. Gather my thoughts. Wow. I mean, just wow. That felt so natural to play. That really felt like a combination of this guitar and that amp were coming together as one. You know, it felt really reactive and responsive, but also controllable. That's such a good tone, man. I mean, where do we go from there? What else do you want to know? How well does it take pedals? It takes pedals very well. Should we try it? This is the Greer amp's light speed and overdrive pedal in front of it. risk putting a fuzz on. Okay, sometimes the answer is just to play guitar loud. I mean, I know we've got good ingredients here, you know, a nice guitar, a couple of nice pedals and a nice amp, but I think a big part of this experience is just being able to play loud. Like I said, the ingredients here are wonderful. This amp is superb and I love it. I'm obsessed with it. It's kind of become my go-to in the last few weeks, over my other Victories even as well. That's not because I prefer it over the other Victories, but it just seems to combine the best of what I love about my other amps. All of that comes together to create a beautiful amp that works really great with pedals, but still has character. And I'm finding that that is a really, really tough thing to crack. That feedback. If you enjoyed this video, please go down and subscribe to the channel. Really helps me out and gives me a reason to come and do these cooler things outside of the studio. Stick around though, because next week I'm going to be creating basically the dream stereo amp rig, which I've never ever done before. We're going to put a couple of my Victories next to each other, experiment with some wet effects, wet dry stereo. It's going to be an epic video. So subscribe if you want to see that, and I'll see you in the next one.